Hey everyone! Today on the show we have Eliza Waldman, a musician and songwriter from Brooklyn, New York, here to talk about her life and her band. Hey Eliza, can you tell us a little bit about Eliza and the Organics and how you first started your career and how did you get into what you're doing?
Yeah, sure. Hi. I'm Eliza. Good to be on the show with you. Um, so my band is called Eliza and the Organics, and we're kind of like a funky rock band. Um, and I started the band. It's actually kind of a funny story. I was like a serious classical guitar player for a long time. Um, and then when I got to college, I went through a breakup and I started writing all these like really angsty songs. And I had never written songs before, and that was very weird. And then I just like it seemed to be like my thing in life. So since that moment, sophomore year of college, um, with that first just like kind of heartbreaking experience, yeah, since then I've just like found my purpose, I think, as a songwriter. It was the beginning of everything.
Sounds excellent. Um, that you made that into something that really drives you. Um, so as a person, like, how do you identify? Can you tell us about your cultural or religious background?
Sure, yeah. I come from kind of a weird mishmash of things. My mom grew up evangelical Christian. My dad is kind of like an apathetic Jew. My siblings, one of them is an atheist and one of them is like used to be pagan but isn't anymore. So we're kind of like all over the spectrum, I guess, religiously speaking. And I definitely identify as like a half Jew because like I think the culture and all that is really important to me, and like the heritage. But I tend to be more of like a Buddhist in my personal beliefs and in my life. Um,
Mm.
which I think, I don't know, it's just funny that like my entire family is just kind of like, every religion, well, as many as you can fit into a tiny family, sort of like pushed together. Um, but I guess we're all just kind of like, explorers and free thinkers, and we sort of have to process things our own way.
Hmm. There's a huge body of uh, support from the Buddhist community, isn't there?
There, yes. And I got really into that stuff when I was in college. I wanted to be like a comparative religion major, but I was already a double major in French and music. Um, but I started taking all these classes my senior year, and I was like really, really into it. Like I'd take like dream workshops, and um, I took a class about like yoga in the Western world and sort of like what Western interpretations of Buddhism are. And like I'm fascinated by all that stuff. I think it's really interesting.
Definitely, definitely. There's a lot to learn from there, and there's a lot to a religion can whether you follow it or whether you just learn about it. It's a great way to connect with people and learn about life and people.
For
But
sure.
so you face a lot of emotional and physical challenges. So I have a couple questions. Like, what
Hmm.
does strength mean to you? What do you feel that it should mean and should not mean? And what does it mean for you to be authentic with the way that you think, feel, and relate to the world?
I love that question. I think that's like a really interesting thing to talk about. So I definitely have had, some struggles. I've had some issues with relationships, and have had some health issues recently. And I think it's really made me reconsider a lot of my beliefs because I think I grew up with this idea that like, strength is like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and never showing weakness, never crying, like if something bad happens, you just deal with it. Um and with certain things like, with health issues especially, um at a certain point you have to kind of accept what's happening to you. And I just found that whole idea of like, strength means never showing weakness. it wasn't really working for me, and it doesn't really work for me anymore. And I think I've had to become a lot more accepting of myself and sort of find strength in different things. Like now I think of strength more as like being able to like cry and be okay with it. Or like, being able to like accept if I'm having a really bad moment or something is really hard. And and advocating for myself. Like in the past, I might have sort of just like pushed through the pain if something was really bothering me. And now, I I feel really good about myself if I like stop for a moment and ask people to adjust what they're doing for me. Because I think that is a different kind of strength, and it's one that our culture doesn't really recognize that much, which is kind of sad. Um,
Incredibly.
yes, and I think it's something that it definitely affects men a lot. Like men are supposed to be strong and stoic, and that's like traditional masculinity. But it also,
Mhm.
I feel like I got sort of the same upbringing that like that's what it means to be strong. And I think we're not really doing ourselves any favors as a culture falling back on that because it only works up to a certain point, and then if something really bad happens suddenly, like, and you can't just like be strong in the traditional sense, like you're going to have a lot of problems and a lot of issues.
Totally, totally agree. Strength should always mean, standing up for yourself and, not just pretending to be happy if you're not. It's strength, but strength can mean a lot of things. And I'm glad that you're not just buying into this one dogmatic type of thinking about it, is that's something nobody can take from you.
Yes, and it is definitely, I think it's different for everybody what it means to feel strong, to feel good about yourself in that way. But I think I don't want to say I'm glad I've gone through so many hardships, really, but I think it has changed my thinking a lot in some positive ways, and yeah, that's something
You're
I'm
glad
grateful
for the
for.
result. You're glad for the
Yeah,
result.
I'm glad because I think I feel like stronger as a person now. I feel like I'm able to deal with things in better ways than I used to be able to.
Yeah. Sometimes having a disease or a disability, especially suddenly, can sort of just like make you. It can change you.
Yeah.
It can make you more. It can like basically wake certain parts of you up, and just help put to bed other parts.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Yeah. I feel like
Hmm.
I've changed a lot and I've grown a lot in certain ways, and and they're good ways. They're definitely good ways.
Hmm. So, what you mentioned being a self advocate, and that's really really important. I was wondering, what do you want the world to offer to those struggling with your disease? Like, how can they accommodate to you better and just generally smile upon you more? You know what I mean?
Mhm. Um I think that that that's a hard question. Because especially, I live in New York City, and it's uh it's a place where people are not really like always looking out for those around them. There's so many people and everyone's kind of focused on themselves. And it can be a hard place to have a disease. Like if I'm on the train and someone sees me, they're not going to think like, oh, this person, has a nerve disease, like she needs a seat. Like they look at me and they see like, oh, she looks like pretty healthy. Um, so it's hard to like find ways for the world to accommodate you. I think what I've found more is that like I really need to advocate for myself because people aren't going to look at me and identify me as like, oh, she's sick.
Mm.
And I think it's hard to change that. I think that like community helps a lot. Like just having people around you can count on. But beyond that, I don't know. It would take some real like changes in our society for me to feel like, just like walking out on the street or something, like there was a whole lot that was making me feel supported. And it might be different in another city too, because New York is not really very accessible to a lot of people. Like, I remember my housemate told me a story about, like, I think she broke her leg, and it's really hard to get around in New York City if you have to take like escalators, and you can't just take the stairs up and down in the subway. Um, it's not the most friendly city if you're not, like, healthy and able-bodied, and kind of wears on you as a place.
Mm. Yeah, there's a huge problem with people not believing that, just any of us can be sick, or that any of us can,
Yeah.
sans people who fit this idea of what sick is supposed to look like. We need more advocacy on invisible disabilities.
Yeah. What are what would you say are the best ways for that to happen? I'm really interested.
This is an interview about you and what you think.
Okay.
But yeah, let's talk about the world. The world can be a tough place, and the world is just kind of, sometimes it's flat out a nightmare for some people. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
what are some good things and what are some bad things about it? Let's start with the bad, so we can pick this back up on a good note.
Okay. I mean, I think there's a lot. There's a lot, like, if you don't feel supported by your community, if you can feel lonely, you could, like, money. There's so many things that can just, like, make people not be having a good time. And there was when I was thinking about this, like, I was thinking about The Princess Bride, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, but I was, like, obsessed with it when I was a kid. And there's a line in that movie where one of the characters says, like, life is pain. Anyone who says differently is selling something. And
Yes.
I remember as a kid just thinking that was like, oh, that's terribly dark. That's so dark. And, like, as an adult, I kind of see what they're like, I'm like, yes, that's true. Like, life is painful. And you can't really shield kids from it. Like, um, just growing up is painful, and there's so many things, like, failure is a part of life. And I think that's something that childhood did not prepare me for. The idea that, like, oh, you're going to fail a lot of times at things, and that's, like, a natural part of life, and you have to be okay with that. You have to be able to pick yourself back up. Um, so yeah, I think there's a lot, just so much struggle in life. But I don't think it's not all bad. Like, life is pain, but that doesn't mean that it's not also a lot of other things. Like, um, there's a lot of joy that I find in my life, in my musical community, and, like, friendships, and being an artist, and like, living in New York is
Mm.
actually really cool. Um, but I think it is like, I kind of like just sort of acknowledging, yeah, like, life is pain. Life is, like, really painful sometimes. Um, and that's just sort of a fundamental truth of being a person. Um,
Yeah. And childhood does not prepare us for adulthood.
yeah. Yeah, it really doesn't. Like, and I also teach music lessons, and I see this a lot with kids. Like, no one wants to fail. And sometimes if a kid makes a mistake, they'll get really, really upset, and they'll be like, that's the end. I can't do music anymore. Um, but I think that's one of the most important lessons in life, is recovering from failure. Is,
Mm-hmm.
saying, like, okay, well, this didn't go so well, but I'll try again, or I'll try something a little different this time. Or
Mm-hmm.
it's just how we grow as people, is through through all those failures.
Yeah. Um. So, what about the happy stuff? Like, what is so great about this world? There's a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's, my art is very important. It gives me a lot of joy and satisfaction. And songwriting is one of the things that makes me happiest in the world, really. Like, being able to craft a song for me is like taking a sliver of my perspective and my life and like putting it out there into the world and like finding a way to realize it. That's immensely satisfying. Um, and especially, I think for me now, like living in Brooklyn and just being part of a very vibrant musical community with all these people around me who are also musicians and who are also like basically doing the same thing, like trying to um, create. Um, that's a very special thing, and that's something in the last few years that I've like really really loved. Um, and I value, you know, my family and my communities a lot too. Just networks of people. Um, that's something I find very very satisfying. Yeah, I
So,
do also have a let's see, how old is she? A 3-month-old niece, and that is
ah,
incredible. I have to say, it's really kind of a game changer.
yeah, yeah,
And
babies, man,
babies, that's right.
babies. So, can you tell me about some of the hardships that you've had, and in spite of these hardships, what makes you feel empowered here and now?
Yeah, definitely. So in the last couple years, I was in an abusive relationship, and that, you know, that was a very hard time for me. And then I got diagnosed last October with a disease called Charcot-Marie-Tooth, which is a degenerative nerve disease. And I'm not gonna lie, I started having just like a massive pity party for myself, basically. Just feeling like, you know, how is this going to affect my life? What am I going to do? All my hopes and dreams, what's happening? Um, and it's something that I'm still adjusting to and dealing with, but I do think it's helped me sort of take a step back from everything and find like a fresh perspective on what I'm doing. Because it's really easy to get sort of like moored into the day to day, like, oh, I have to do this today, I have to do that. And, you know, something like this really makes you take a step back and think, okay, what do I really want to happen over the next year or the next few years? And I think I've come to a place of more acceptance of it. You know, it's something that I'm going through and that I have to deal with. But you know, like I still have choices about how I go through my life, and you know, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna work out. Like I'm gonna find a way to make a path for myself, I guess. It just might not be exactly the path that I had planned on originally. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah. Sometimes life just sort of throws you through a loop, but like sometimes empowerment can be like, oh, I feel so good after being thrown through that loop and showing life what for, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And what empowers me, I guess honestly, I think that like talking about my experience and feeling like I can be an advocate for myself and for other people, that's something that I find very valuable. Um, and I think a lot of people tend to feel that way, like they want to, you know, it makes them want to do something bigger than for just themselves. And I
Mm-hmm.
am sort of feeling that way, and I'm not sure exactly, you know, where that's going to take me. Um, but it feels kind of like the beginning of a journey with that, I would say.
Hmm. Yeah. It sounds like this really has been a game changer and like both the like distressing and a really like wow, I'm awake now kind of
Yeah.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has, sure.
It's definite. It's obviously it's taught you a lot. But what advice do you have to share with others? Like whether it's in general or whether it's about like getting into the music business and like tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. You know, I think a lot of my mentality for a long time has sort of been um relentlessly pushing through, you know. And I think there's something valuable in that. I mean, I think you should be kind to yourself and patient with yourself, but you know, recovering from the failures and not taking a failure to heart is very important because you know, succeeding in music, it requires just a lot of belief in yourself and a lot of fortitude, and there's going to be a lot of no's that you get, and there's going to be a lot of just indifference because it's sort of like a wall of indifference that you're slowly hammering away chinks in. um but it's such a worthwhile path being a
Mm.
musician. And I, you know, honestly, I wouldn't really change anything anything that I've done in the past. So I guess my advice would be, you know, to be kind to yourself and patient with yourself, and, you know, believe that what you have to say is worthwhile, whether you're a musician or in any of the arts, really, or just however you're living your life. Like, you know, everyone has something worthwhile to say and worthwhile to do in life. Um, I think that like loving yourself is really the only way to make it through.
Right, right. That's very true. It's, it sounds like my philosophy of, you'll get a lot of no's, but eventually you'll get a yes, and it'll be very satisfying. You
Hmm.
might get more than one yes, and that's even more satisfying.
Yeah, for sure. Yes, the yeses are worth it.
Yeah. So, you mentioned having gone to therapy. What are some personal improvements that you've made after doing that?
I think that it's funny because I was one of those people who was very like I'm not exactly anti-therapy, but kind of like therapy is fine for everyone else, but like I'm not interested in it. That was sort of always my take, and I'm really glad that I did it. I think it helped me learn to stand up for myself more in life. Because I think the way that I grew up, you know, I sort of learned that like politeness is not really contradicting people. Politeness is going with the flow. And so what I've been working on a lot is standing up for myself basically and speaking my mind more, um, which is very satisfying, I have to say. uh, I've been yes, I've been really enjoying that. um, but I think it's helped me build better relationships because you know, if you're always not really speaking your mind or yeah, it's going to create distance in your relationships and tension in your relationships. And you
Yeah.
know, that's an active struggle to be my best self. It's not always that easy, I have to say. But it's something that I work on a lot. Um, and it's honestly made me feel a lot more in control of my life, being
That's
able to do that.
great.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, therapy really does help people like learn about themselves and their boundaries, and what boundaries they need to set and when and why, and if they need to stop setting certain boundaries or start setting more. So,
Yeah,
I'm
boundaries
really
are
good.
super
Oh, sorry.
important.
Yeah. I'm just really glad it's helping you out.
Thank you. Yeah,
So,
me too.
yeah. Yeah. So, what are some things some people might find surprising about you? Like,
Things people might find surprising about me. Sometimes I'm not really sure, you know, how people really view me. Because I've been told that I'm kind of like a cipher a lot of the time, and then I've been told that I have a very expressive face. And but I don't know. I guess I get I get pegged as like very chill and easygoing a lot, which I'm not at all. Uh, and yeah, it's like an internal volcano, and that would probably surprise a lot of people. Um, I also, let's see, I speak 2 languages fluently, and I speak 5 languages if you count languages that I speak very badly. And when I was in, let's see, ninth grade maybe, I decided to teach myself Finnish from cassette tapes because I was obsessed with a Finnish folk rock band called Värtinä that I found in the local library. Um, yeah, so there's a fun fact. I speak a small amount of Finnish that I've probably forgotten most of at this point.
Finnish is such a lovely language.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really beautiful, actually.
So, where do you hope you end up in the future?
Um, let's see. Where do I hope I end up in the future? I hope that I end up um I'd like to have a house and a dog and be able to sit out under the stars at night. Um, yeah, I guess I'd like to have sort of a personal safe haven, that's maybe not in New York City. And I'd like to tour a bunch. I'd like to tour like a lot.
It
So
sounds like a
those,
lot of fun.
yeah, those are my personal goals.
Oh yeah, we should go to you for life goal advisements because those are really 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 good ones for you. And good
Thanks.
ones probably for everybody. Everybody could use a nice house with stars around them.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that is really awesome. Can you tell me about anything you might have in the works? Any upcoming tour dates and where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, definitely. So my band, Eliza The Organix, has a bunch of exciting stuff coming up. We have a music video coming out January 18th. It's going to be on a website called Pure Grain Audio. And that video is really, really cool. I'm really excited about that. We have a release show for that January 19th at Coney Island Baby in Manhattan. And then February 1st, we'll be in Philadelphia. February 2nd, we will be in DC. February 3rd, we'll be in Baltimore. And we have a bunch more tour dates that are still in the works coming up in March, probably. So, yeah, that's all stuff I'm really looking forward to.
That sounds excellent. That sounds excellent. So what is your website? I just want to make sure people can
Oh,
find
yeah.
you.
The website is elizaandtheorganics.com, and that's with an X at the end. Eliza and the Organics with an X. And all
O
that
R G
info.
O
Mm-hmm.
R G A N I X. Yeah.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Awesome. Yeah. That one will make it a little bit easier to find, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so thank you so much for the interview, Eliza. This has been Dr. Comedian with Danielle Ryer with an interview with Eliza from Eliza and the Organics. You can hear more from her on her website, www.elizaandtheorganics.com, Organix. And she'll be playing in the Philadelphia area pretty soon, it sounds like. And we'll be playing a short song of hers a little bit later. You can listen to Dr. Comedian's The Best Medicine Monday from 1 to 2 all spring long on 91.5 WDBK. You can listen online or through the TuneIn mobile app. Bye, Eliza.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.